So you CIOs and CMOs, you need to look in the mirror, according to Matt Healy, and realize that you are part of the problem. Not the only part, but you are part of the problem. You are watching The Customer Edge here in our Pulse Network studios. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. Liz Miller, the Senior VP of CMO Council, is back alongside Bernard Chung of SAP. Very interesting comments from all of them. Let's start with you, Bernard. What's a takeaway from that feature there?
You know, I love what Matt said. He said that both marketers and IT need to step up and own the relationship between both of them, because I think at the core at it is a trust issue, and this I think is started and it goes back to the pre-digital marketing era. When really the priorities of IT and marketing wasn't really aligned. You know, IT back then, and still some of them, have been really focused on more data integrity issues, security issue of their system, and focused on mission critical systems like finance, accounting, or inventory supply chain. And often IT support requests from marketing went unmet. Or it was at the bottom of the pile in terms of priority list, right? And it took a long time to actually see anything from a marketer's perspective. So I think marketers had to work around IT, go outside the organization to get technology support and solutions to help them, their businesses. So I think, and today with marketers having a greater mandate about managing customers and delivering customer engagements that makes a difference, and also helping to grow the organization, they're still following that path. They're going around IT to get technology and support for technology. So I think what marketers and IT need to do is they need to decide that they need to work together, right, and accept each other as strategic partners in evaluating technology and coming up with plans and strategies so that they could have the best solutions for their organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that what I also loved about the segment was it actually asked people to look just beyond that CMO-CIO dynamic, right? I think that part of the trust issue isn't just between those two C-suite roles. It is actually systemic to the entire organization. We've built silos, again, kind of our number one, the bane of all of our existence, where we've built these silos where it's impossible to trust people on the other side of the wall. We don't have a single point of truth. And that really comes from the entire C-suite, right? It has to be that CXO change that has to happen, where you need that strong culture. It needs to come from the top. The top needs to enable this change. You're not going to get roles to come together unless you're compensated similarly, unless you're aligned, unless you have the same technologies, unless you have the same customer experience strategy. You've got people who are still going to be fighting underneath the C-suite, and it's going to take a really strong leadership core to change that culture and shift us back towards the customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marketing technology, what you need to win. That is the subject of this episode of The Customer Edge. And now, in the next two segments, we're going to talk to some actual marketers, some case studies, if you will, people that are in the field and have had their hands on some of these decisions when it comes to what you need to win, when it comes to choosing the right technology. So we bring in right now Corrine Avilennes. Corrine, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you. And yourself?
Well, thanks for being with us on this show. Now, Corrine, you are the former Chief Digital Officer at DE Master Blenders 1753. You were also the former VP of Global E-Commerce and DM at TomTom. Tell us just a little bit more about yourself, and when it comes to this subject, why you care so much about what you need to win when it comes to marketing technology.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what you just mentioned, the complete alignment and shared agenda between the CIO and the CMO is very important, because when you're in marketing and trying to drive the marketing, and especially the digital marketing agenda, you can't do anything without technology. And it's really important that the business, the marketing drives the IT agenda and the choice of technology, and not just the CIO or only technology for the sake of doing technology.
Hey, Corrine, it's Liz. It's so great to see you. I wish you were actually here. We'd probably have a lot of fun teasing Butch. We've been giving him a hard time. He's been getting our pulses racing, Corrine. See, nice. Butch, I had to throw in another one.
There you go.
But, Corrine, I think that in the previous segment, we've been hearing a lot around kind of this need for change and this need for a shift. And I think you've actually been at the forefront of leading a lot of those changes within your own organizations and certainly in a couple organizations. So would you mind starting us off with maybe where do you need to start? Where do you start to identify the right technologies and what are some of those kind of backbone issues that you need to have developed for your strategies?
Right. So basically, when you define your digital marketing strategy, you need to define obviously what are the key marketing pillars that you want for it and the KPIs you want to track. If you look at the example I gave in the first visual, this was an example of strategy that was designed for delivering an outstanding consumer experience. So whatever the pillars you have here and the KPIs you want to track, you need a full set of platforms to support it. And it's not just a couple of platforms, it's really an ecosystem of integrated platforms. Every single one of them need to communicate with the other ones. You need that, for instance, if you want to be able to recognize visitors on your website or to personalize content that or offers that you want to push to them. Or if you want to have the full information of your customer when they interact with you through your customer support or via Twitter or whatever. Or even more important, if you want to really build a deep understanding of your customers, you need to collect every single piece of data that you have on them and aggregate it so that you extract insights. And this whole ecosystem of platforms, as you can see, is quite complex because everything needs to be communicating with all the different platforms. The database at the center of this is obviously the key core of the whole ecosystem because that's where you aggregate all the information about your customers. You need it for every single initiative that you take, and also every single business initiative that you do should be a way, an instrument basically to provide and enrich even more your database.
I think that's a great point, Corrine, and I think that in that database, you're collecting so much customer data, but and for those of us and for those viewers who are in the States, we may not really understand some of the complexities that you're having to deal with. Can you share with us a little bit about how that customer database becomes so important and some of those issues that you may be dealing with, say in Europe? I know that some of the privacy regulations really tend to put a new wrinkle into how you're collecting that data and what you're doing with it once you've collected it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the privacy regulations in Europe are becoming tighter and tighter. And in essence, as a company, you have the obligation to know exactly what type of data you store about your customers, where you store the data, track the whole process and be able to really show, okay, this is the process, this is where my data is stored and everything. And upon simple request by the customer, you have to be able to remove every single piece of information that you have on this customer. So obviously, if you're in a multinational with lots of brands, lots of countries, lots of campaigns, lots of emails, etc., you might have your data in bits and pieces here and there. And if you don't get control over this, you're just basically not capable of abiding by the law and being able to remove, for instance, every single piece of data about one customer. So when I was at DE, for instance, what we've done is that we've defined a complete consumer data strategy. So basically, what do we need to know? What type of data we need to build, why we need it, where we need it, etc. Along with that, we've done a complete inventory of all the consumer databases that we had so that we have a full view of what is stored where and really make sure it's an exhaustive inventory. And then we defined a clear plan to merge all of those databases and make sure that we centralize it so that we put it in a central and completely controlled environment to be able to comply with the laws.
Hi, Corrine. This is Bernard Chung from SAP. Thank you for being on the show again. You know, I would imagine like building and managing this kind of digital platform and driving the digital agenda across your organization requires cooperation, right? And also to get alignment and key buy-in from your key stakeholders. What is your experience in accomplishing that, and what are some of the challenges associated in doing that?
Yeah, it definitely needs a lot of buy-in and also a lot of investments, because you can imagine that, well, you hardly start from scratch to build this type of ecosystem, but it's very rare that a company has already everything completely set up and linked to each other. So you need money and you need support. One way of driving your agenda forward, which in my experience found to be quite efficient, is to be really the voice of the consumer and or the customer, and bring all the data, all the insights, everything that you find out, to bring it and share it throughout the organization. As an example, when I was at TomTom, we implemented a whole ratings and review platform, so that basically you encourage people to share, to post reviews on your products. So this has multiple advantages. First of all, you show your customers that you value their opinion, because you basically ask them to post reviews. And that's also an opportunity for you to start engaging with them, because you can respond both to the negative and positive reviews when it's appropriate. And that shows even further that you really care about what they say, and that you value also the content of their opinion. And last but not least, once you've collected all this data, you can really analyze it and extract insights on how your products are perceived, how your brand is perceived, what people like about your products or services, or what they don't like about it, etc., and share it with the whole organization. This was really key to our strategy at TomTom. In my second visual, there's an example of report. So obviously, I've hidden the content of the reviews itself, but this report was aggregated every 2 months. And it was shared throughout the company, so to the CEO, to the managing directors of the different businesses, B2C, B2B, head of customer support, head of marketing, all the people in sales. I mean, all the management had a direct view on and a summarized view on what the people thought about the products per country, per type of products, the top issues, top positives, and everything very synthesized and very clear.
That's great. I love that it was a single view. It's that single moment of truth, or a single vision of the customer. I think is so important. But I think today, one of the things that a lot of us are dealing with is the velocity of data that's coming in. It's now no longer just customer support. It's no longer, say, point of service or in-store. It's social. It is a channel that, while we may own what the handle is, we certainly don't own a lot of the conversations. It's a lot of listening, and sometimes people feel like it's standing in front of a fire hose a little bit, just trying to take it all in. How do you recommend people manage the complexity of what today's kind of customer voice is bringing to the organization?
Well, my advice is to reduce complexity as much as you can, wherever and whenever you can. If you take the example of social media, again, for a multinational like DE, with multiple countries, multiple brands, multiple categories, and also, of course, the complexity of the social media landscape with the different channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. If you don't get control over this whole landscape, it can become very, very complex, and even worse than complex, it can become a complete mess and be detrimental to your brand equity. So it's really important to reduce complexity as much as you can. On the example of social media, what you can do is implement platforms like publication tools that can help you reduce that complexity, improve your brand consistency, and also gain control over your social media channels. So typically, if you do that, you can make sure that all the people that access your social media channels are the people that you chose and that are fully authorized to do that. Not the employee that left 3 years ago and created that channel because there was a specific campaign, or the agency you used to work with again a couple of years ago and still has complete access to your properties. It's really important to manage the controls and then the security around your channels very, very tightly. In terms of reducing the complexity, you can also manage your channels by choosing very carefully where you want to be present, where you don't want to be present because it doesn't make sense for your company or for your products, and where you want to be depending on the geographies that you have. You can also try to roll up your channels all together, so that instead of having 10 or 15 different Facebook channels, for instance, you would see just one. That doesn't mean that the language and the content cannot be localized. It can still be localized, but it reduces a lot the complexity. And of course, it improves dramatically your brand consistency. And finally, if you use such platforms, you can also schedule the content publication, make sure you reuse the content from one country to the other, or from one brand to the other when it makes sense, and that you organize this whole content publication calendar. And by doing this, you also improve better the consistency of your brand. So in the visual, there's an example of the inventory we've done at DE for a YouTube channel. So for instance, you see all the different YouTube channels for the different brands that were found. And for every single channels, you have the owner of the channel, the number of videos that were posted, number of followers, the number of comments, etc. So you can see by just making simple overviews like this per key social channels, you can see exactly what channels are active, what channels are not active, and what channels might be redundant or not. And you can make very simple decisions to really roll out or remove or keep certain channels based on this type of inventory, and therefore you manage to reduce complexity.
Great information, Corrine. Ways to reduce complexity within your organization when you're talking about this subject, marketing technology, what you need to win, choosing the right technologies. You talked about stakeholders within your organization. And right at the beginning of it, like we started this whole program, the consumer, a customer-centric view, but your database as the core of it all. Clearly, you know what you're talking about. You've done this for a long time. What's next for you, Corrine? What happens for you next?
Well, you need to stay tuned to know about this.
Now that's the ultimate tease right there.
We're going to keep a pulse on Corrine.
Oh, here you go.
Sure.
Now you're taking it over. That's
Guys.
Corrine, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Corrine Avilennes. Thank you so much, Corrine.
You're welcome.
All right, that is Corrine Avilennes. You have been watching The Customer Edge. Marketing technology, what you need to win.